Hello! Today we're going to be doing another collection showcase. This time, last time I did my Vaporwave vinyl collection, and this time we're going to be looking at my Japanese pressing collection. So to be specific, these are all records that were pressed in Japan. So I do have some albums by Japanese artists, but they are not Japanese pressings. These are all my Japanese pressings. They were sold in Japan, and they are definitely one of the things I like to collect the most. They definitely add a bit of flair to your collection because a lot of them are kind of unique, and you can kind of get them for not too bad of a price if you know where to look. So yeah, let's get started first with my first ever Japanese vinyl pressing. This is 6996 by Cornelius, his second solo album, considered a Shibuya Kei album, although by Shibuya Kei standards, this is extremely kind of the most loud and rocky that Shibuya Kei ever gets. I think it's kind of underappreciated in his catalog. It's a fun album, that's for sure. A lot of cool ideas. It's not on streaming, so this is kind of how either this or a CD. And kind of unusual, the fact that this was pressed and I'm able to get it for like $50, because by the 90s, this was made in 1995, vinyl had almost completely died away in Japan, and a lot of the times the only vinyl pressings are extremely limited collector's editions. Although I do think the Shibuya Kei scene, which is kind of like a indie pop rock genre that was kind of retro, they might have stuck onto the vinyl a little bit longer as kind of a trend, which is why this was pressed on vinyl, because a lot of times in the 90s, they would only get a CD release. But yeah, it's a good album. My first ever Japanese pressing, and I was able to get it from a United States seller, which is really nice when you can find that, because a lot of times you're going to have to get them imported, which can be difficult. Next we have A Boy by Morita Doji. She is a Japanese folk singer, songwriter. She has, it's typically very sparse guitar based, extremely sad, like some of the saddest music you've ever heard, but it's so well made, very cinematic. People think it sounds like a tragic movie soundtrack, and it really would fit a lot of the time. I don't think you need to understand Japanese. I do speak Japanese, but I have a feeling that this is kind of music that can tug at the heartstrings of anyone. It just seems so despairing a lot of the times, but it's so beautiful, and it really kind of, this was released in 1970, I'm not exactly sure when, 1977 maybe, but she definitely does some interesting things with like a song just suddenly ending, and then like just hear birds flapping. It's very affecting. And this was pressed in 1977, but it sounds top notch. It's incredible how well some of these Japanese pressings can be maintained and preserved if kept properly. But yeah, this is a great record. I got it quite early on, and I've seen the price going up and up because it really is some great music, so I was fortunate to get it for a cheaper price. Next we have A Long Vacation by Otakieichi. This is considered one of the best city pop albums ever, I would say. It is pretty iconic in Japanese pop for just being very pleasant. It's just kind of like a Beach Boys style music, very similar to that sort of just complete joy. It's very fun. Maybe not the most deep, but at the same time the songs are very well arranged. He made a lot of music that kind of never went anywhere. A lot of this Niagara Triangle stuff, which he was a member of. Niagara was his music label. Songs, which is a band. Sugar Babe is a band, and they had an album called Songs, which is very iconic, and that album's actually quite valuable. But this one, even though it's a pretty well-regarded album, is very easy to find. You can get copies for under $20. Of course, you're going to have to pay Japanese shipping, but this is definitely an easy city pop edition for a classic. that's what you're looking for, I recommend looking for A Long Vacation. You can't see the A, but I'm always covering it. A Long Vacation by Otaki H. Actually, is now on streaming, so it's recently the 40th anniversary. Next we have Zero by Alba Ichiko. This is, as you can see, maybe looks brown or whitish. It's kind of pink. There you go. It's a pinkish, very minimalist. She is a Japanese folk singer, known for just using a guitar for most of her music. Her newest album did use more instrumentation, and it's extremely good. But this, I would say, is her best album. It's not very many songs, but a lot of them are quite long, and she is such a good singer. She is such a good songwriter, and she is so good at creating an atmosphere with just her voice and her guitar. It's insane. A lot of these songs, like Kaiji Kake no Uchu, which is a 14 minute long song, is just magical. Some of the best music ever made, in my opinion. This is a recent pressing, the first ever vinyl pressing it was done in 2021. So I'm very glad to have gotten this. It's a great album. I think you might be able to get a copy from a seller directly, so you might not have to resort to scalpers yet, but this was definitely one I recommend checking out soon. Next, this is my only not a Japanese album, Japanese pressing. It's Songs from the Big Chair by Tears for Fears. I put a video of me unboxing this a while ago. It's a great album. Sounds great. I won it at an auction, a Yahoo auction, for $14, which is a great deal, especially considering how good the condition was. It did take a couple months to arrive. That's just how shipping works. Yeah, I would say you could probably get a good quality reissue, something like that. But if you want, I think getting a Japanese pressing is a good idea, especially for an album where it's not overhyped like Pink Floyd or Beatles. It'll get to like hundreds of dollars because there's just such a demand for it. But with a lot of like 80s synth pop new wave albums, you can find a cheaper pressing that good sound quality, often very well kept up because they're kept in better condition. So yeah, I recommend maybe looking into that if that's your thing. Next we have Tadaima by Yano Akiko. She is a Japanese jazz pop, synth pop kind of experimental singer. She is sometimes considered the Japanese Kate Bush, in the sense that she has a very, she experiments, but is also pop, kind of. And she also has a very distinctive voice. A lot of Japanese female singers will sing in a sort of childish voice, which can kind of get annoying to me, personally. I kind of find that kind of annoying. But her voice, I would say, is childish, but instead of the sort of like cutesy little like anime girl voice that just kind of gets on my nerve, her is like an actual child sometimes, and it's kind of loud. It's kind of annoying, but it's fun. I would say it's fun. A lot of the songs are written from like the perspective of a child. Definitely a cool album, and this is actually a promo copy. I didn't know it was going to be a promo copy. It says Mihonban, which means promo record. I just got it, and it turns out it was promo, so that's cool. Although it's not even, the promo version isn't even listed on Discogs, so kind of obscure record. I might make the Discogs entry for it. Next we have classic album. We got Solid State Survivor by Yellow Magic Orchestra. They are a synth pop trio, very successful in Japan, and actually got some hits abroad with the techno sort of dance scene. They also influenced hip-hop a lot. They're very popular with clubs in America. There's some great synth pop, some great electronic, some great proto video game music, I guess. You can kind of see that in there. It's a lot of good songs. There's some, like the Day Tripper cover is strange. I don't really understand it. It's one of the strangest things I've ever done. Besides that, I'd say it's a pretty good album, and it's also quite cheap, so you can get a copy of that. There's been a lot of pressings. And another YMO thing, the record's currently on my turntable. is this single, Kimi ni Mune Kyun. This came in today. And it's a great synth pop single. A lot of the times they didn't really sing very much. They often opted to just, maybe if they were singing, they'd use a vocoder and sound like robots. Here on this album, Naughty Boys, they put their voices at the forefront, which is kind of unusual, but it's actually very well done a lot of the time. It's a great synth pop song. The pressing quality on this one kind of is a little abrasive, but it's fine. You just kind of got to finagle it a little bit with the bass and treble, and it goes down. But yeah, it's a great song. And then we got Fushigi by Nakamori Akina. She is a Japanese J-pop singer. You can kind of class her in the idol category. I typically kind of don't like that kind of music. But this one is, if you know this album, you know it's quite unique in the sense that it's one of the strangest pop albums ever. If you can call it a pop album, she kind of went full ethereal wave on this one. Full Cocteau Twins. This is in the 80s, and it's unclear whether or not she was listening to the Cocteau Twins. You can definitely see the influence. But bizarrely, she decided to produce her own album, and after a couple albums of standard J-pop material, she just kind of went really experimental, put her voice at really echoey and in the background. Oftentimes the background singers are louder than her. Very, very bizarre choice. There's a picture disc version, and there's also a standard black disc version. This is the black disc version, and I don't like picture discs very much. This one's actually a little bit harder to find, the standard, but it was even though it's very experimental, it sold very well because she was one of the best, most popular artists at the time, so it kind of just sold very well. Although there's a kind of a story of people would buy it and go back to the store and say there's something wrong with it because it sounds so weird, when in fact that's how it's supposed to sound. So yeah, this is definitely one of those quirky albums, not too expensive either, so I recommend checking this one out. Fushigi Mysterious by Nakamori Akina. Next we have, this is a great one, Twilight Zone by Yoshida Minako. She is a city pop singer, could be classed along the lines of new music, which is a sort of thing, kind of like a pre-city pop that was very popular in the 70s. This is very jazz influenced, a lot of the songs. They have a lot of soloing by brass instruments and saxophones and keyboards. Very long songs. You typically with city pop, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, but in the mass you get some 7-minute, 8-minute songs on here. And they're great. They're really good. There's some really incredible songs on here. She has a great voice. This is co-produced by her and Tatsuro Yamashita, who I'll talk about later. Really well done. She writes all the songs too. She wrote a lot of his songs. They were good friends. And yeah, I think it's a very underrated album. I think other albums by her get a lot more recognition when this one really is just so well done. This is a great tracks reissue from 2019 or 2020. It's a great pressing, and those great tracks albums, they're not cheap, but they're very well done pressings. Very, very good remasters, and sometimes they are cheaper than the original. All right, next, we're almost done. We got Tsukihime by Yamaguchi Miyoko. Sorry. She is a Japanese techno pop singer. Definitely one of my favorites. It's called Techno Kayo, and I would say this is my favorite Techno Kayo album. Tadaima by Akiko Yano also falls into that category, but yeah, this is Tsukihime, Moon Princess. Great electronic album, especially as 1983. Remarkably very organic. It doesn't feel synthetic really very often, which is strange for such, 1983. A lot of synthesizer work was so beep 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 beep, so bleepy, so mechanical. This feels so organic. It's really good. I highly recommend checking it out. She made 3 albums during the 80s. She did make a comeback, but this is her final album from the 80s before she kind of retired. Well, she continued writing songs, but it's definitely kind of a harder one to get a hold of. They're very expensive on Discogs. I went on a Yahoo auction for this. I got it for like $45, and I had to pay shipping and stuff, which is, I did save money on it, although I did have to wake up at like 5 in the morning because the auction ended at like 5:30. So I had to wake up early and bid on it. But yeah, it was worth it in the end because it's a really, really, really good album, and I highly recommend checking it out and getting a copy if you can, because it's a top-notch pressing. A lot of the Japanese pressings are really good quality, but this one is like one of the best. And finally, well, not finally, kind of finally, we have my Tatsuro Yamashita section, and he is a Japanese legend, city pop legend, king of city pop, as some say. And I have quite a few albums of his in my collection, which is because I just really like getting his stuff. They are great albums, and then none of them are on streaming, so the best way to listen to them, I believe, is on vinyl. So first we'll start off with my first thing I got from him. That is a Right on Time 7-inch single. It is one of his best songs, alongside another really good song that isn't as well known, but it's not even from the same album. For some reason they put a song from his last album on the song from his new album. I don't know, but yeah, this is definitely one of his most iconic songs. This is pretty easy to find because it was just so popular. It's #1 song, maybe #2 or 3. And yeah, I recommend checking Right on Time out. Now let's get to the albums. First we have Boku no Naka no Shounen, The Boy in Me, like the youth in me. This is his last album of the 80s, 1989, I believe. And a lot of people consider it to be one of his most mature, most artistic works, especially lyric-wise. It's kind of more about reflecting on his, youth, about childhood. Although there's also songs like Oroyo Fish, which means like dance fish. I don't know. There's some goofy songs on here too, but other ones are quite more serious than it normally does. And they're all very well produced. The original pressing of this is one of his hardest to find. It'll pretty much always run you over $100. But they did a reissue in 2020, which I was able to get a copy of, and I think there might still be some you can get a hold of, but for long it's going to be very difficult to get. So I recommend, if you like this album, if you like his type of music, then I recommend trying to find the 2020 remaster. It's a great 2 LP version instead of the single LP. Really good sounding. Really good sounding release. Now, we have Melodies by Tatsuro Yamashita. This is one of the best, if you're wanting to get vinyl records, is a good entry-level vinyl record. I say that because a lot of the times it kind of gets to the point where his vinyl records can get so expensive. If you're not trying to look for deals, you might not want to shell out that money initially, and this one's one of his cheaper ones, and it's also a very good album. Some very famous songs, Kashimi no Jori, which is a great song. It was on the Big Wave soundtrack, but in English. You got Merry Go Round, which is one of his best songs, really good bass playing, and Christmas Eve, which is arguably his biggest song ever. It's sort of a annual Christmas song that you hear every year in Japan. Highly recommend checking this out. It's very well preserved. It's in really good condition. I will say though, the pressing has a large amount of sibilance. At some points it can get kind of grating, but it's definitely one of his cheaper albums you can get. So if you're looking to start a Tatsuro Yamashita collection, I recommend starting with Melodies. Or you can start with Pocket Music, which is, I would say, it might be his cheapest album. It's also one of his least known. A lot of the songs here are kind of, well, they're not bad. They're actually quite good songs. But this album just kind of gets ignored a lot of the time. There's no like full rip of it on YouTube. A lot of people just kind of forgot about it. They also did a reissue of this one in 2020 alongside Boku no Naka no Shounen, but this one's so cheap already, it's kind of pointless to spend more money on that, because it's still a great record, and if you buy it from a good source, you can get it in really good condition to the point where it's almost mint already. But yeah, It's definitely not his best album, but he is so good. I don't think it's hard for him to miss. He don't miss. So really anything by him I would recommend checking out. And this one, it's just, it's one of it's his cheapest album, I think, so it's just something cool to find, cool to get. And next one, we got my second favorite album of his, being Moonglow, which is his last album of the 70s, and his last album for RCA. He technically stayed on the same company, but he would go to Air, which is more of like a city pop oriented label. This one is a great, great, great album. The side A is like flawless. Like every song is a complete and utter jam. Definitely one of his more underappreciated albums. I think this is his most underrated album. It's not cheap. I think I paid $55 for this. But if you find it for a good price, I recommend getting it. It's not ridiculous like some of the other albums get. But yeah, this is a great album. A lot of good songs that I feel go underappreciated. Funky Fleshin' is probably the best known song, and it's a really, really, really good funky song. And things like Let's Kiss the Sun and stuff like that, that's also really great. So yeah, Moonglow, great album. And finally, my proudest possession, possibly in all my vinyl records, Right on Time by Tatsuro Yamashita, which is arguably the best city pop album of all time, some people might say. A really, really good album with another flawless A-side. And this is one of my proudest possessions because it's a really good album and it's quite rare, but I also was able to get a copy with the OV in really good condition for $45. Great deal. It did take a couple months to arrive because I bought this right before coronavirus kicked in, but it's a great album, although it's, getting to the point where it's almost $100 now for something like this, which is kind of ridiculous. And yeah, I'd say that's it for my Japanese vinyl collection. In terms of Tatsuro Yamashita, I'd say I'd love to have For You, but that's almost always over $100, which is kind of ridiculous for me. But I hope you enjoyed taking a little trip to Japan with me through my music, which I love very much. It is a great way to appreciate the music of Japan, I guess, by listening to it. It's a good way to listen to it. It's definitely probably this section of records right here is probably my proudest collection of records, in the sense that a lot of them are really unique. I like having something different, and yeah, they are a lot of fun to listen to. A lot of fun when you get a package from Japan or something like that. It's really cool. So yeah, thank you for watching this whole time. I've kind of been talking on for a while, but thank you very much. This was a fun thing to do. I've been meaning to do this for a while. I'm not going to be getting many more Japanese records for a while now, so this is kind of how my collection is going to be for a while, I think. Alright, thank you. Bye.